Hey, Gail Craft here, and today on the Empowering Process podcast, I get to have a nice, beautiful discussion with Grace Mosgeller. Grace and I talk about her experience, my experience as a leader, and connecting with your intuition and the different archetypes. And her experience, near-death experience, which brought her to her awareness as to what her purpose is in this life. She's a beautiful woman. I know you'll love this discussion. Join me now as we listen to Grace Mosgeller chat with me on the Empowering Process podcast.
You're listening to the Empowering Process podcast with your host, Gail Craft. Listen as she holds frank discussions around how your purpose, being present, and trusting your power impacts your life. Whether you're an entrepreneur, leader, or developing your vision, you'll find wisdom and insights you can utilize right now. Welcome your host, Gail Craft.
Hello, everybody. This is Gail Craft from the Empowering Process podcast. Thank you for joining me today. And I have with me Grace, and make sure I get this right. It's Grace Mosgeller. Is that correct?
You got it. That's right.
So Grace is, she's an angel. She is a gifted soul purpose coach and energy healer who specializes in empowering women entrepreneurs to show up authentically in mind, body, and spirit, and optimize their peak performance so they can solidify, I should say, their expanded business and personal vision with simplicity and ease. I always say with grace. But so that would be with you, Grace. So welcome, Grace. Thank you for joining me today.
Well, thank you for having me. It's an honor.
It's fantastic. So I do want to say one of the things that you talked about with me was the shift that you made in trusting your brain and ego, or actually letting it go and trusting spirit. And I want to talk a little bit about that because so many people, it's such a huge undertaking. So many people don't understand. We're raised to suppress our intuition and rely on beliefs that are downloaded into us and our ego. And with that in mind, we forget who's talking to us, right?
So yeah, who's talking to us? Yes, that external validation. And it's just that whole, this is how you play the game and win. This is how you achieve, and this is how you survive. And we're just entrained in that. And that works for a while, right? And you can jump through hoops, and achievers achieve, winners win. But sometimes there's an emptiness.
Sometimes?
Yeah. Well, eventually. I mean,
yes.
Like you keep achieving and winning, and you're like, well, okay, I've done this before. And that, so there's an emptiness, or it's you get worn out and your body gives out somehow.
Right. You get worn out. You get stressed out. So I'll talk a little bit about some of my experience. So I'm one of those people who I can set a goal, and my first time that I realized that I could achieve a goal, I was, I think, 25, and working in this organization. And, my boss says, "What's your 5-year goal?" And I looked at him, I said, "To have your job." Right. And, in 2 years, I get a call, he's fired, and I'm offered his job, right?
I had a schedule.
That's the thing about setting a goal. And so what happened, though? I mean, I stepped into it. It was amazing. I was so successful. And then I sat there and I went, well, now what? I'm like 29 now, right? And I achieved what is dreaming anyway? What's this anyway? Right. And so that, I think, is what happens to us when of course I set more goals and I achieved them, I set more goals and I achieved them. And I didn't like where I landed. I landed on the board of directors of a big insurance company thinking this is awful. right?
Right.
But it's what we're supposed to do.
Right. And you have, quote, the power, which is what is an achievable thing, something to win. But actually, true power comes from the heart, comes from the soul. And because it's the power that fulfills.
That's funny that you said that, because the book that I just grabbed to review again.
Power versus force. Yes. Yeah. That is
Right?
it. Right.
Yep.
True
Yep.
power is love. But it's such an oxymoron. So like I'm a soul purpose coach and I work with the personalities of the soul. And then there's 5 of them, 5 main, and then everybody's got like a little bit of all of them, leaders especially. And so a leader is a quality of a soul. So is a winner, a team player, a very creative person, and the super sensitive types. And so, but a charismatic leader also has a big part of them is super sensitive, right?
Well, they
And
have to be in tune.
they have to be in tune. Like, well, they need that to die for a cause. Because you think about it, true leaders back in the day, they went to war, right? Or that their whole essence of being was to support their community, to be sure their community was protected and well taken care of. I mean, the good ones, right? And but their job was always coveted because it had that power, right?
But
And
and this is I love that you're bringing this up. This is the lie that is wrapped around the truth
always.
always. So what was my key to success every place that I worked is, as a leader, I had 2 main jobs in my eyes. Whatever my individuals in my team needed, they got, whether it's personal, professional, whatever. If I saw it, they got it. And no one touched my team.
Ooh.
I like a warrior, right? Like with the sword in the ground. I stood between. They had their job to do and they were not going to be messed with, right?
Awesome.
Um, they had to come. I was the gatekeeper. Those were my 2 jobs. And I always had the team that everyone else, no matter what organization I was in, wanted,
Good for you.
while I got the rejects from other managers. They would call and say, I can't handle so and so. I'll take them. I'll train them. Huh.
Yeah.
How come they succeeded with me, but not with you? Because your ego got in the way.
Right.
And
Well,
I didn't even know what I was doing. So let's talk about that. I love that you're bringing this up.
well, yeah. So, if I was to analyze it forensically, it would be that this part of you that's super sensitive came through, and you led with that, which is
Right.
the higher self. Well, yes, the higher self part of your leader. But a lot of leaders don't like to expose that vulnerable part that shows you care, because it there's a perception, and some people can take advantage of it unless you've got that rock solid warrior boundary around yourself, like you described. It says, "Don't touch me." I hear me roar,
Right.
but, and all that happens when you really drop down into your heart and you really connect with your heart. And there's a lot of compassion and understanding involved. And there's a lot of trust and acceptance involved. And that's not easy for a leader because, like I said, over lifetimes, over generations, like the whole archetype in our world, leaders are always attacked, they're always criticized, they're always pulled apart.
But here's
And
the thing, when you're a leader who trusts your team, who
oh,
invests in your
they'll die for
team,
you. They'll die for you.
they did. They offered time and time again to throw themselves on the train track for me
Yes.
because they saw that I threw myself on the train track for them.
Right. And so the a leader who's unconscious really loves that, right? A leader walking room, they want everybody to do what they say. They want to, that's the unconscious leader, right? And And that's what happens a lot in relationships is the people give and give and give, they don't get anything back. And so then they're feeling resentful and there's pushback and there's resentment and this team synergy falls apart, whether it's in your family and romantic and personal relationships or the team at work.
Well, that's interesting because when you're giving with expectations, are you really giving?
That's I call that the hidden agenda, right?
Right? The hidden, because you're not.
Well, that's when you go for purpose, right? And that's what team is all about, is the common goal that everybody's already bought into.
Right.
That becomes not the hidden agenda, but the agenda.
The agenda. I had a meeting one time, and I had at one point 3 teams that I was managing, and I had 2 of them in the same meeting because I had to share common information, and I just didn't want to do it twice, right? And then the larger team had some imaging issues that they needed to resolve. I did not say, hey guys, you're not showing up. I actually said, so this is happening and this is happening. What do you think the perception might be? Right. And so I was asking questions and I was eliciting their feedback. And by the time I was done, we had a list of things that maybe the team could work on. And they volunteered and jumped in and left. So the other team was in there observing.
Oh,
And
nice.
they went, wow, you're good. And I said, you don't think I do this with you? Right? Of course I do. Because it's not up to me to solve the problem, right? And it may not be a problem. It might be my perception that it's a problem, right? It's up to you to let me know what you're seeing out there and what you think you can do. And then you're successful.
Yeah.
Right. So anyway, so what was it that happened with you that you came into this world of coaching as an entrepreneur with the agenda of having women shift from trusting their brain and their ego to tapping into their intuition and actually knowing that what that feels like and then leaning into it?
Well, because first half of my life up to age 40, I was brain dominant and I didn't know who I was because my well-meaning parents who were super successful, high winners, big achievers, big winners, high achievers, I said that wrong, and very impactful in the community, in the world, saw, and they were also survivors of the Great Depression and the World Wars and the Korean War. So they saw that anything other than, fitting in this box, doing the right thing, jumping through these hoops, and is the key to success. And so they basically unknowingly force fed myself into that. It's not that I would never have done it, but if they were like you and say, ask me questions.
Well, believe me, I didn't do that at first. As a leader, I did. As a leader, I did. Right.
And so I came out not knowing who I was because I was the good girl. I followed and I did exactly what they said. And anytime I had an opinion, they said, no, you don't want that. You want this. And after, like your formative years growing up, you don't know who you are. But you don't know who you are until things don't work. And that's what started me on the path of personal growth and development. And the things that didn't work, of course, were nobody liked me at work. And my family didn't follow me. They were resistant. I'm like, why aren't you following me? And so I dug into that why. And I just started peeling the beliefs, the emotions off one little thing at a time. But it wasn't until I understood this concept of soul, and the personalities and the higher self, the lower self, and the power archetypes and the consciousness of the chakras where the negative attachments are, and then the higher self, that I really began to understand, number one, who am I? Why am I here? And then really, there's no words, there's no price that you can put on how you feel. But the hardest part of all of that was trusting my heart, letting go of my brain and trusting my heart and really being vulnerable. And I'm really good at that because I did it. And when I opened my heart, it opened slowly at a time. And
Thank God it did. Mine blew open.
did it?
I
Did you?
I thought I was
Did you
having
go
a
to the
heart attack.
hospital?
So I'll quickly tell the story because my listeners
Yeah.
so I'll make it quick. So I went through many iterations of aha-ness, of facing myself and whatever. And
We
this
all
was
do,
like,
yes.
it's not a one-stop shop, guys.
No.
So this was the big one though. And the story doesn't matter, but I found myself on the couch in my living room thinking I was having a heart attack. It hurt so bad. And I knew I had a choice, call 911 and they would put a pacemaker on or figure out what was going on in my life, that I was not listening to the lesson so badly that the universe was pounding in my heart. And when I transitioned and transformed and understood what story I kept replaying and why, right? And the why doesn't really matter. It's really facing the pain and loving the inner child, right? When I faced that, my heart literally opened up.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's where
you can't
yeah,
buy that. You can't buy that.
no, you can't buy that, right? And so many people, they hear our stories about the pain,
And they
the
go,
pain for the gain, right? And they're afraid of the pain. And I have to tell you, the pain of opening up that heart was
no.
so much better than the pain of living the way I was living before that.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
Time. Yeah. And that's what transforms. And so the steps beyond that, because I thought, oh, that's the end, right? Well, the steps beyond that was, okay, now that I'm trusting my heart, do I really believe it? And that's how I use the energy of the consciousness of the chakra systems. So like, just for example, like you take a betrayal that happens in your tribe, whether it's at home or at work or whatever, organization.
It happens.
It happens. And then it comes up and you're like, it's unfair. So then it comes up into your second chakra and you're like angry. And so you either suppress it and take it on your own, or you plot revenge, or you want to give it back to them. But those aren't really empowering things, but that's what we're taught. Those are the options. But there's a third where you come up to the third chakra, you voice your anger to yourself and you kind of go, what did I really deserve? And that's your power, because that's when you can like really tap into that quote inner feeling that's loud when you're connected with it. And then you self-validate, and that's when you start to put up self-respecting energetic boundaries. And there's forgiveness involved, and compassion, understanding. And then the step beyond that is then you got to like truly believe it in yourself moving forward as a peak performance person, right? Because you need that every level that you go. And it's when you open your heart, your seventh chakra opens up to the divine, and the divine can come in and finally say, yay, now you get to see me, see yourself.
Right?
Like
I've been knocking on the door.
I've been knocking on the door. But then you get to see it too. And they say seeing is believing. So here you've got in your lower self, you know it by feeling it. And then in your higher self, you know it by seeing it. So you integrate that. And that's when you're one. That's when you're aligned. That's when you're with your soul. And nothing can stop you. And you can be that warrior like Miss Gail with her.
So I would share
a
brief. I have ahas almost daily. It's like it's always a lesson, always a lesson. And this right, and this one, but I'm listening, so you don't have to give me a heart attack for the lesson, right? and so this one, I've recently had an experience where I was in the hospital, not a problem, and a friend of mine before going in, she said, you battle, and you battle with those nurses, you battle with those doctors, and I wasn't feeling that, right? But I knew that she was fighting on my behalf, and so I gave her energetically permission to be my warrior.
Oh,
right? And so that gave me a completely different perspective on other people's emotions that may not align with mine. But if I can look from their perspective, why are they feeling this? It's usually defending me.
it's
It's
for
for
you.
me,
Yeah, when
right?
you battle for something, not
Right,
against.
right. And so
Yeah.
if I give them permission, but they don't have to come into my energy sphere because it's not mine. Wow, how powerful is that?
Well, that's like working together, right?
Yes.
It's having your differences for the same common goal.
Well, that's the
And it way all
collective
better.
energy. That's the collective energy. There's more than one
Yes.
energy,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Right?
I love it. I love it. I love
Yep.
it.
Yep. So once you work with someone, like Grace, like Gail, and understand how to tap into your power, and everyone's different, right? And so there isn't a program, right? There isn't a process. I mean, there are processes, but we need to find out which one works for you. um, when you get there, right, it is living in a miracle all day long. Right. And I don't know about you, Grace, but I still have someone who is at another level that I tap into every once in a while to kind of get my bearings straight again. Right. I'll give you an example. I was talking to him and I'm like, oh my God, the universe is downloading. And then I'm like, listen, guys, I'm in the fifth dimension. I can only do so much. Right. Right. And it was like, and his response was, stop resisting.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Whoa.
Um,
Whoa.
so
Right.
I hear you. Like I'm a black belt in jujitsu and I'm working on the upper boards and it's spirituality. It's just,
Yeah, it's all spiritual.
and it's like I'll go into the void and then they talk about no mind, right? So and it's exactly that. It's like we are one and moving from within the void and just moving without thinking about it, which is no resistance,
Well,
and
there's no thing. So,
there's no
I just came out with a book, right? Journey to Enlightenment. And in that book, I talk about the Kabbalah, patterns on the trestle board, and the tree of life.
yes.
And I touch on the void, which is here in our body as well as there, right? But here in our body.
You go
And
here and then out. At least that's what I do.
right, that's the beginning where our meridians come from, right?
Yes,
That
I
section.
would go with that. Well, let me assimilate that. Keep going. Okay.
Okay, okay. So yeah, so assimilate it because it's like the little nexus there. And in the book, I talk about how the void, which is the no thing, right,
Is
is where
everything.
all
It's
things
everything.
are
Yeah, right
possible.
now. And then it gets moved with intention. And that's why it's so cool. And so that's where self-sabotage comes in is we're jumping through hoops trying to do this external thing. So our intentions are external directed. And that's what wears ourselves out. And that's what provides that emptiness. But when we go into the no thing, right? We go into nothing, but it seems like an oxymoron because it's everything. And from that place, which for me is a big feeling of expansive joy and I there's no words for that. And you put intention behind that.
So the no thing is like the quiet,
This
right? It's
yes, like you're
very
listening to the quiet, but
right.
um there's presence in the quiet.
Absolutely. I explained to my guru that I work with, um, sage, guru, whatever you want, that my concept when I started working, really writing about the void, was I work with people on the universal law of polarity.
Mhm.
So here
The
we
sweet
go.
spots in the middle.
In color, crayons,
Yeah.
black is no thing, no color. White is all color, all things. And people understand that. Okay, so you take you as no thing and all things, but it is all the same, so it's not a line. So I took the line, and he laughing at me, right? I took the line and I connected it and made a circle. And then I took the circle and twisted it and made infinity.
Yeah.
And that's
Communicating.
and that's our meridians.
Yes. That's awesome. That's like so creative. I love how you did that.
Right? Right.
Yeah.
But it's like taking it and asking questions, and that's really what we want to do, right? Is don't take things at face value because we've been programmed. And, not with any ill intent, although that's not true in some cases, yes, in order to control and manipulate the masses. But we have free will, and we have the power to say,
People have the
well,
power.
what does that mean to me?
Yeah.
Right? And is this truth for me? And the truth for me today may not be the truth for me tomorrow.
Depending upon your awareness where you're at.
Right. Right.
Well, the higher self, lower self in your body, just coming back to where more people are. No, not a lot of people are out in the void yet.
Yeah. And they're
But
getting there.
they're
They're
getting
getting
there.
there.
More and more are getting there. But but we can talk about the higher self and lower self. So the lower self is typically stuff that we want to hide, that we're ashamed of and whatnot. But
Oh, shame and guilt, man.
oh my
Ooh.
gosh, but there's a lot of power in that. And then once you integrate it with your higher self of your lower self qualities, like for me, I had in my heart a destroyer, destroyed relationships. And I was so ashamed of that. I sequestered myself away. I didn't go out in public because
Mm-hmm.
every time I talked to somebody, I just ripped them apart. It was like, which wasn't me. And so once I finally accepted, yes, and then I opened to, well, what's my higher self qualities of the destroyer? And then I recognized, oh, I'm a dragon. I have this dragon heat. I have breath that I'm destroying negative beliefs, destroying truths that are not truth, right? I'm
Right?
destroying
Right.
the
You
dark.
redirect that energy.
Yeah, and so you take that lower self energy that's you've hidden, but when you hide it, it takes energy to hide it, where it wears yourself out.
Right.
And then your passion's gone and you can't express, you've got all these like blocks. You put yourself in a cage around yourself.
Yes. And
And
it's
so then when you open
exhausting.
yourself up and you go, oh, I am like what we mentioned before, I will fight for my destroyer will murder the bad, and I say that in loose connotations. I don't think that's the right word,
There's
but
no right, but language is very limiting,
yes,
right?
yeah,
Right. I
yeah,
love the fact that you use a dragon as a simile.
yeah.
My dragon showed up in 2013 in the desert of 29 Palms, and it was amazing. And I've been a dragon rider ever since.
So tell me about your dragon. That sounds interesting.
Uh, um, so it was the spring solstice and full moon. And I'm in the middle of the desert where there's vortexes everywhere. And there were four of us, four women, and so we made a quad and we honored north, south, east, and west at the apex of the full moon. And then, yes, and then went back to sleep. And so after doing that powerful exercise, I went back to bed, and when I'm at the time, my favorite place to meditate was at this beach setting. So I'm like, let me go to the beach. So I'm at this beach setting, and the dragon comes out of the sand underneath me, and yes, and it was such an experience. And I've always had a phoenix. I've always had the phoenix. So I'm like, well, this is very interesting. So that weekend, I was at a woman's event. It was really for women empowerment. And we did a dance to music that varied with our eyes closed, right? And so I have the dragon on one side and the phoenix on the other, and we're like, yeah, right? And a lion shows up. And right. This is, so guys, this is what happens when you allow your imagination to go with the flow. And I looked at the lion. I said, well, you're not my totem and you're not, but you can come dance with us. You're welcome to come. But I know that you don't belong to me. Right. And so she did. At the end, the woman who was facilitating this event brought up a goddess card that represented the music we were dancing to, and that goddess had a lion. And I'm like, that's who you were, right? And so,
She liked how you were dancing.
right, right,
Yeah.
right. It was enjoying the energy. And what does all of this mean? It really means, why are we here? We're here to dance and play.
Yeah.
We're here to
That's also,
experience. We're here for joy.
we are. And to
Lighten up,
serve. And to
lighten up,
serve.
and to serve, and to help each other,
And
help each
rise each other
other.
up, but serve from joy. It's
Yes.
like to serve with love, not to serve with love, to serve with love.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And
Right.
that happens when you just starting to trust your heart, and having those heart attacks is not saying that, because I had a couple of them too. Mine was, I think I was like processing some rape thing or something, and I knew it was going to be deep, and because my cat came and just sat right on my heart.
Yeah.
And then I started feeling it, and I called my boyfriend over, and I go, well, can you just check my pulse? I think I'm all right. My blood pressure, and I was fine, but it felt exactly like a heart attack.
Right.
But I'm not saying don't call 911 if that happens to you, but but then
Right.
the way out is through, right? You have to and so the other really super big benefit of, quote, going into the void, going into your heart, going into that place of peace, is that is the power that melts everything that causes your self-sabotage, that gets in the way of intimacy, of romance, of peak performance. And that's the true power. Like, pick up that book again, Power versus Force. That's it. It's the power is the light, and the force is what worked before, but we're evolving past that as a human species.
Right. Right. And I mean, if you know anything about David Hawkins, I mean, that man should have died quite long before he did. And the only thing that really worked for him on him was his brain. And he spent a lot of time in the power section of his sphere, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty amazing man. So you entered into, how did you transition from being the person that you knew wasn't you and you didn't like? I mean, I literally told myself that I didn't like who I was and it was time to change, right?
Is that how you did it?
Yeah, I looked in the mirror and went, I don't like you very much, and I'm surprised you have friends. Yep.
I didn't say that, but yeah, if I had those words, I probably would have. That was a motivation. One of them was
Yeah.
mostly that I wanted to be closer with my children,
Hmm.
and that was the big motivation, because I did to them what was done to me because I didn't know any different. And
That's what ancestral,
yeah, the whole
is all
thing
about.
is. So
Yeah.
you get to clean up and down that whole lineage line,
Yeah.
7 generations. I did the whole family. And the cool thing, like, in your mind's eye, I had my whole family tribe around, and it was like, yay, like, but not in the physical plane, so like in the spiritual plane, but when we were all there together, it was just like one big bundle of love. But so you were going to ask me, how did I do this?
Yes.
How
How
did
did you make this shift?
how did I make the shift? A little at a time.
Yeah.
And I definitely remember a particularly difficult time when I was still pretty much a way victim, way in the blame game,
Mm.
and really feeling like I climbed a Mount Everest when it was basically only a one of the first plateaus. But I remember looking in the mirror and looking at my soul and looking at God and say, God, I'll do this, but make this worth the while, make this worth all this effort. And then I was like on a mission to help other people do this, but faster, easier, gentler, with less downtime. Because and I was fortunate that I had the freedom to do all this deep introspective work. And most people don't. They've got the responsibilities of jobs, of kids, of family, and stuff like that. And
Right.
so that's what I've done. And
Right.
and it's an evolving thing. Every day I find something goes a little smoother and quicker and easier. But that's what I've done. It's fun.
Right. And it is evolving. And, that is the thing. There are a couple of things that I say consistently to people. Number one, enlightenment is not nirvana.
It's there.
Um,
It's seeing it from a higher perspective.
it's different. It's not, and it's not a destination.
No.
Right. I honestly have been hearing sixth dimension. So we've
that's-
heard third dimension, fourth dimension, fifth dimension. First of all, there's no end to the dimensions because,
Correct. I agree with that.
okay, so we number them because we're in the third dimension and that's how we understand, right? But it really is more fluid than that. It's like waves in the ocean. They come to shore, but then where do they go?
Go back
Right?
out.
Right. 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 And so it's all fluid like that. It really isn't stratified like we like to stratify it. Right. But it's once you let loose, and what did someone say? What's that saying? Let go and let God. Right. It is letting go and it is letting God and adding discernment, right? And adding intention and adding boundaries, spiritual boundaries, emotional boundaries, physical boundaries. And a boundary is only a boundary if there's consequences when it's crossed, right? If there's no consequences when it's crossed, then it's just a whim. Emotional boundaries.
I agree with you on
Not on a spiritual level, but
when I do the energetic boundaries that take the kick me sign off your back, that's just like an elevation of self-respect. So you're putting an energetic boundary around yourself.
right.
Right. And
right.
And then you put a boundary around them and saying, yeah, you can be who you are. And I hope that you can see things my way. But if you can't, I still accept you. So it
Right.
takes that power, that need for you to have them conform to you. And you just say, I deserve to be treated this way. This is my self-respect. And so that's how I do the energetic boundaries. And you can say stop and yes.
Yep,
And
definitely. Definitely. I had a gentleman I was working with, and he called, and he and his wife had a clash, and he said, I came in, she was all over me, and one thing led to another, blah 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 blah. And she knows my boundaries. So when he was done, I said, so she crossed the boundaries. He said, yeah. I said, and you let her? And he stopped. He went, okay. I said, you even let her set up camp. So were they really boundaries?
Yeah.
And he's like, what? I said, what are the consequences? Like, when I come home, you've had a tough day, I need to unwind from work before you get all over me. And then we can have a conversation about what happened. You walk in the door and she starts. What's the consequences?
You can go back outside.
That's right. It's that simple. And you don't just turn around and leave with anger. You say, honey, I know you had a tough day. So did I. You know my boundary. So I'm going to let you cool down for a minute. And I'm going to just walk outside while you do that.
My first husband used to do that. He would come home and we'd be like, rah, 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 rah. And he'd stop, and he had like sparkly eyes, and he was a really happy guy. And he goes, wait a minute. And I'd be like, what are you doing? And he goes outside, he comes in, hi babe, I'm home. And he'd pick me up and he'd throw me across the couch and make passionate love. We were young.
Right. But he had the right idea.
He did. We didn't
Right.
make it though long term, but
that's fine. That's fine. Every relationship has its pros and its cons, and it's just, can you get through the tough time? And if you're not, then it's just not meant to last long. That's all.
Yeah.
That's all. And so the bottom line is, we all have the challenge of identifying beliefs and stories that we were raised with in order to conform and to comply. Then we have the opportunity as we become adults, right, and become empowered, if you will. We have the choice,
To choose.
right?
But you have to see it from that higher perspective.
Right.
And that's why I really like the soul personalities, because then you get to see their patterns of behaviors and what's important to them versus what's important to you. And so you can see relationships on the outside, but also the relationships within yourself,
Hmm.
so that you can become your own sovereign queen
Right. And we're
inside.
all archetypes. We're
Yeah.
all
And so
archetypes.
we can have all our archetypes inside working together as a team. It's like what you do when you put your sword down, right?
Right.
And
Right.
to get that all working together, and once like in jujitsu, what I do is that they say, and I think this timeline has changed, 10 years to master yourself, and then 10 years to master another. So I'm thinking it's like 5 years maybe, or
And
less.
it's accelerating so quickly right
It's
now.
so quickly right now. It's just amazing.
Yeah.
I sit there and I'm like, I don't know what you think, but I think because I go into that void a lot and I got my DMT so activated, there's colors a lot, and I go through portals and whatnot. And I'm like, and then in the real world, I'll just set an intention. God, I really need help getting over this. And by the end of the day, I'm in it, and it's clearing or cleared. Just,
You know, uh,
and whereas before that was like months.
right? And a struggle.
Yes.
I'll hear things like when I'm coaching, or and I don't even say coaching because that's not what I do. But when I'm mentoring and working with people, I will, oh, you want me to tell this story? Tell the story. And the client will be, funny that you should bring that up. And I'm like, no, not really, but okay. I had one I was talking to last week. He's like, every time we get together, we're like in sync. I'm like, yeah.
Mm. It's really
Right?
cool. I mean, it's really, really cool. I'm very, very happy to be alive. I remember when I was in my 20s, I was rafting, whitewater rafting early in the season. I was the only girl with a bunch of guys again. And it was cold. It was in the northern Trinity Alps on the Snake River, just before the Snake meets the Klamath, and wearing a wetsuit and a helmet. And
Yeah.
we hit some rapids, and I got knocked out of the boat, and I almost drowned. I was caught like this.
Yep.
And I was just about ready to pass out, and then everything got quiet, and I heard a conversation, but I didn't hear the conversation. But all I knew it was I wasn't my time to die, and that I needed it was didn't I want to be here for that beautiful thing, that I was here for something special. And I'm like, I was 24, right? Like,
Right.
I'm just
Sure.
like, so all ever since then, I thought, well, maybe it's my kids that are going to do something special, because I didn't think it was, but it's me. I mean, along with everyone else like me.
Right.
And we're here for this big, great, beautiful awakening.
Right.
And
That
it's I'm
right.
just
We're at the
privileged.
beginning of, and so we can go on forever. So for
I
me,
know.
I
I,
became aware that there was a major, it's called thinning of the veil in 2012.
nice.
Right. I was in San Diego and having lunch or something with a couple of other women coaches. And I looked at them and I got like the shiver. And I said, can you feel it? And they're like, oh, yeah. I said, change is like, holy crap. And they're like, the time for the feminine is coming.
Yeah.
And it's not women versus men, guys.
Oh, no, no. It's
It's
the
not at
when
all.
when
It's the approach. It's the approach.
when
Right.
you it's that when you did that infinity loop, it's
Right.
the yang, the masculine and feminine, and the sweet spots in the middle, and it's dynamic, because there's
Right.
time for like let's get it done, and there's time for leaning back and receiving, and it's
Right.
dance, right?
Right. I love that. And so it's funny because that client is a dance instructor.
Awesome.
Right.
Awesome. Well, then he
Right.
gets it. Right.
Right. Yeah. He totally gets it. He's just totally into dance being a communication and dance being spiritual um and
Masculine,
how
feminine too.
very masculine, feminine, and switching roles.
Yes.
I've danced where I've led. I love it when I dance with a woman who knows how to lead, because I'll lead, then she'll lead, and there's a way to transition so that it's seamless, right? To transition roles. And I can remember the first time I did it, someone was watching, and they went, like, you guys switched roles leading. We're like, yeah. I didn't even notice, right? Because there's certain moves where it's very easy to make that shift. And that's what life is
Can be like,
communication.
yes.
Yes,
And,
yes.
and it is like, they say going in the flow, but I think it's more like leaning into the waves, like what you were saying,
There's the ocean again, right?
the ocean again.
Right.
Yeah, and there's a lot of metaphors in my martial art thing about the waves and the oceans, and
Yeah.
and also the tornado, the vortexes and the triangles.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, okay, we can get into sacred geometry. Oh,
Oh, I know, we're forever. So this has been awesome, Miss Gail.
this has been fantastic. And I want to ask you, if someone wanted to get in touch with you, how would they do that?
Well, the simplest way would be go to gracemosgeller.com, which is on my thing right there. And there's two ways you can start interacting with me. Well, actually three. You can sign up to work with me, or get a call, and we'll do a vision thing. But I've got an 8-day chakra cleanse that begins the awareness of what your negative attachments are and what the higher self, like the lower self, higher self, the survival versus the thriving is in the consciousness of your chakras up. And it's really easy. It's not meant to be a deep dive yet. And then so there's that. And then I'm just starting a stop 3 steps to stop self-sabotage. And it's all about, going down to your core, finding your soul purpose and your soul characteristics and qualities and why you fight them, and learning how to lift them in 3 steps. So there you go.
Fantastic. That's awesome. So thank you so much, Grace. And thank you for listening to the Empowering Process podcast. If this resonated with you, give us a thumbs up. If you have a question, by all means, comment, and we'll be happy to get back in touch with you. If you know someone who could benefit from this, please do share it out. And like always, absolutely subscribe so that you know when the next episode is coming up. This is Gail Craft from the Empowering Process podcast. And Grace, thank you so much for your time. Bye-bye, everybody.
It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Empowering Process podcast. Be sure to visit Gail at gailcraft.com to learn more about how she serves thought leaders, entrepreneurs, and goal seekers. And remember, if you like this broadcast, be sure to share and subscribe so you don't miss an episode.